Hello everyone and welcome to another incredible game from round 2 of this year's Uzbek chess. It is Praggnanandhaa versus Shamsiddin Vokhidov. Pragg had a pretty good game in round 1. He drew against Chitambaram, whereas Shamsiddin Vokhidov lost the Nodirbek Abdusatorov. So now he does have the black pieces against Praggnanandhaa, but of course he's looking always for a victory. So let's see what happens. It's a crazy game. And I believe the game was decided already on move 10, but we'll see. We'll see your guys' take on this. So let's see what happens. Pragg with white opens with pawn to c4. Knight to f6. We have knight to c3, e5, and pawn to g3. So the Bremen system. In the English, we have bishop to b4. And pawn to e4, grabbing the center here. We have pawn to d6, and now there are bishop to g2 known games and knight g to e2, but here we have pawn to d3, and it is now already as of move 5 that we have a completely new game, which is very exciting as this is the English we're talking about. So okay, Shamsiddin goes knight to c6, we have pawn to h3, grabbing that g4 square, pawn to a6, and now knight to e2. Also h2 will be useful once you castle kingside. Sometimes you want to go king to h2 as the bishop will come to this diagonal, so you can play f4 and so on. We have pawn to b5, bishop to g2, and the rook to b8. Okay, at some point you will capture on c4, so you want to have your rook on the b file. Plus there's a bishop on g2. Having a rook on a8 is not the best. We have castles kingside and bishop to c5. As we've discussed, the bishop is now controlling this diagonal. And this is where it's hard to say. I wouldn't say that the game was decided here, but a lot was said about the position because Pragg goes rook to b1 here. And it's a very nice prophylactic idea. It's the third top move recommended by the engine. The engine wants b3, but the idea is that if you go king h2 right away, which is definitely Pragg's idea, but he has to wait for Shamsiddin to castle kingside before going king to h2. If he goes king to h2 right now, then pawn to h5 is extremely annoying. For one, if you go pawn to f4, which is kind of your idea, you can just play knight g4 check, and you can never capture that knight as the h file opens up and you just get checkmated. So you would have to go back and then b captures on c4, b captures, and after pawn to h4, there's not much to look for here. And on the other hand, after pawn to h5, if you go pawn to h4 to sort of prevent the pawn from moving forward, then you just give up the g4 square for the knight. Knight g4 check, and after king g1, you will capture on c4, captures. Queen f6, you will put triple pressure on that f2 pawn, and it's hard to defend. Like if queen e1, you can go knight b4, knight d3. It's a very, very hard position for white. So here, after bishop to c5, Pragg goes for this very nice rook to b1 move. And now there's not much to do here. You could wait around with pawn to h6, but even if you want to play pawn to h5 at some point, pawn to h6 just seems like a waste of time. So best would be here to castle kingside. And castles kingside is the top move recommended by the engine. So this is what Shamsiddin goes for. He castles kingside. And now Pragg goes king to h2, because now it's a lot different. You don't have to worry about the h file opening up. There's no rook on h8. Okay, pawn to h6, and now pawn to f4. Very nicely played by Pragg. We have b captures, d captures on c4, and now knight to d4. Pawn to f5, and now pawn to a5. We have pawn to g4, Pragg preparing that pawn to g5, and the bishop to a6, just going after the c4 pawn like nothing is happening. We have pawn to b3, Pragg defends before continuing on the king side, and pawn to c6. We have knight to g3, and knight to h7. Now you are waiting for those pawns to march forward, but the knight is covering f6 and g5. So knight to h5, Pragg gains more control over the f6 square, even though in terms of pure accuracy, knight to h5 might not be the most accurate, but it's very, very hard to actually counter. You should just ignore it and play pawn to a4, and okay, the game continues. But Shamsiddin obviously took the bait and played pawn to g6. And this is now where Pragg goes all in. He plays bishop captures on h6. And it's easy to say, okay, of course, we want to open up the position. Bishop captures on h6 seems like the best idea, but there are other moves to consider. Okay, knight g3, we're not going to analyze that, even though it's perfectly fine. But for example, f6, you could give up a knight here, and then after, let's say, bishop captures, you attack the rook. Black says, okay, you can have the rook. I mean, I already took a piece. G5, and now look at this. Knight to h7, and queen captures on h5. This is Not easy to play, but black is perfectly fine here. In fact, black is better after queen to e7. Now you have to play pawn to g6, or you don't have to, but without pawn to g6, you don't have anything. But after captures and king to h8, there's not much for white here. You can capture on f8, knight will capture on f8, and now after a nice, let's say, check, king h7 and queen to h5, maybe going for rook to f7, not rook to f8, but rather you're going to play queen g5, and you've taken care of everything. So it's a position that needs to be deeply analyzed, and Pragg just does it. Plays bishop captures on h6, spends 13 minutes, but I imagine he was already calculating this move on a couple of previous instances. So bishop captures, and now g captures on h5. The move that sort of allows black to continue is queen to h4, but I mean, it's a move that it's very, very hard to explain, because after bishop captures, for example, rook captures and f captures on g6, f captures, rook captures, king captures, and now queen to c1. Going after queen to h6, you have to go knight g5, and then after queen to f1 check, you start running. King to e8, and then after knight to f6 with check, you will run away further. King to d8, you go knight to g8, you prepare for the queen to enter the game. King to c7, and the king is very, very safe on the queen side. But yeah, I mean, good luck figuring all that out. So after bishop captures on h6, you have g captures on h5, grabbing that knight. And now the position is winning for Pragg. And I thought about making this pause the video moment. I thought about some other positions. I decided to make 2 pause the video moments. So this is the first one. You have only one chance. What do? How do you win here with white? So the only move that wins is pawn to g5. And okay, we're preparing pawn to g6. That's not that difficult to spot. And the problem is, let's say you just move the rook. You say, okay, I'm not going to give you the rook. Then queen captures on h5, and you're just not in time to defend everything. For example, knight to f8. You're going to play bishop captures on f8. You get rid of the knight, and after rook captures, eliminated by the dark squares. There's no defense here. Nothing you can do. So after g5, king to h8 was played, and still queen captures on h5. Now you have the king on the h file, so obviously g6 is a huge threat. Rook to g8, and now pawn to g6 by Pragg. F captures, we have f captures, and now rook to b7. And now I imagine this position is even more difficult to calculate than the previous one. Have at it. There's only one way, while I give you a couple of seconds. Yes, rook to f8. I'm only kidding. It's rook to f7. And okay, not that difficult to figure out why. You're putting more pressure on the knight, and you can't just do nothing. Like, to give you an example, if you play a silly move, let's say pawn to a4, what's the threat here? The threat is pawn to g7 check. And then after captures and captures, you go king g8. You double up on the f file or pretty much any other move, and that's it. Black is without a move. You can play queen to e8, maybe try something, but just queen g6, and now you're just gonna move the bishop and win the game. Even if you give up the rook, doesn't matter. Bishop h6 check, king to h8, and you go rook captures on f7, and no defense here. If you go queen to g8, of course, just bishop g7 check, you give up the queen, and you get checkmated on the next move. So here, best move was played, that is rook captures on f7, but it is insufficient. Pragg plays g captures on f7, threatens to pick up the rook, rook to g7, and okay, it looks, material-wise as you might be surviving, but there's a passed pawn on f7. So rook to f1, as we say, rooks belong behind passed pawns, queen to f8 blocking the pawn, and bishop captures on g7. Now, if you capture with the queen, you can just queen the f-pawn. The knight is pinned, so no worries there. That's not possible. King captures on g7 was played, and now just pawn to h4, and not a move inside for black. Bishop to c8 was played, trying to get some pieces into the game, because all of these pieces are not really part of this game. Bishop to h3. Just trading your piece for black's piece that might be doing something at some point in the game. Bishop captures with rook to g1 check. Even though you could capture first and then go rook g1, Pragg plays the most precise sequence of moves with king to f6 and rook to g8. Going after the black queen. Queen captures on f7, and now just a nice queen to h6 with check. You can give up the queen now, but king to e7 was played, and now rook g7, and it was in this position on move 33 that Shamsiddin Vokhidov resigned the game, as there is nothing more to be done here. You could either give up the knight or you could give up the bishop. Either way, you're going to lose more material. Let's say knight to f8, rook captures on f7 with check, king captures on h3, and you have a knight and bishop for a queen. Of course, with the bare naked king on f7, that's no way you can hold this. Yeah, beautifully played by Pragg, as usual, drawing Aravind, and we've covered a couple of games by Aravind. I mean, he's such an amazing player, exciting player. You know, his games are just beautiful to watch. So, of course, that was a difficult matchup. Now taking a win, Pragg is doing very well in the tournament, even though it's only, you know, a second round. Very nicely done by Pragg. Not only that, he climbed up the world top 5. He is now only a couple of, I think, 3 points shy away from overtaking Arjun. But, I mean, it's something that we've always expected from Pragg, because you never know. It's either going to be Pragg or Arjun or Gukesh or even Aravind. Now you never know which one's going to break into 2800, which one will become the world champion. You know, they're all of them are somewhere in there in the top 10. So, amazing stuff. Very much looking forward to what happens next. And, yeah, use that hashtag suggestion, guys. So, hope you guys enjoyed it. I would like to thank everyone for their contribution to the channel. Thank you a lot. I really appreciate it. As usual, you can check 2 of my previous videos here. Thank you for watching, and I will see you soon, continuing to check up on your wonderful suggestions and whatever else happens in the chess world, such as Uzbek Chess, the 2nd edition tournament. Thank you all. I will see you soon, and have an excellent rest of your day. And sorry for a bit of a distorted audio in the previous video. I have no idea what happened there. Mike just went, you know, crazy. See you soon.